Hey guys, it's Khadroth again. Since my prior video on Dante seemed to be pretty appreciated, I thought today we'd go over some more of the comps for Gilfest. Today I think we're going to focus mostly on art comps and how you guys can form them, so let's jump right in. Now this video isn't going to focus on some of the more strange out there comps like the last video did. Instead, this one is going to be dealing more directly with the common ones that I think most people should be able to pull off, either due to the fact that it is going to be using a welfare, or again just due to the general fact that arts comps can actually take a support high damage dealer to basically wipe out the wave for them. That is one of the benefits of the arts comps, and that's one of the reasons why I actually recommend it for a lot of you. So a lot of these comps are going to revolve around Sieg, the welfare caster. Now, I know some of you might be thinking, oh god, it's cardboard, not him, but he's actually a fairly good welfare and a amazing arts looper. So that's going to make him very good to use against the semi-final node, which is all assassins, and even the finals node, which has quite a few assassins in it as well. Another commonality you guys are going to notice dates all the way back to my Gilfest video about Dantes is Paracelsus. Paracelsus is going to be used over Nero Bride in most of these circumstances because Paracelsus can take out that initial wave for just about every comp. And that's one of the reasons you want to invest heavily in him, especially that charge skill, because depending on what other support casters you're taking, you might not be able to pull it off in an efficient manner. On screen, you're going to see another spreadsheet from my friend Bob Moss's. It's dealing with the semifinals wave instead of the preliminary wave first, because for the most part in this video, preliminary wave isn't going to be doable with arts comps. Yes, I've heard some weird, outlandish ones out there, but I'd rather focus on where arts is at its strong point, which is again going to be in the semifinals and finals waves. So this comp is going to be a 5 CE comp, and what that means, as you guys can see, is that that'll be 5 of the Lotto drop craft essences, and the 6th is actually going to be an MLB damage CE that Gilfest has in it. This is going to be a very high output, high octane comp, and you're not going to have to worry too much about being able to clear. As you can see here, the clear percentages are amazing, with only that first wave, one of the enemies may be causing Paracelsus a little bit of trouble, which should be easily handleable with a card. To break down some of the assumptions at play in this comp, just understand that we are using double waiver here. And anytime you see a asterisk next to a waiver, understand that that also means we're saying you can use Skadi here instead. So that's actually a really good thing for most of you guys, since it'll allow you to not just have to have your own waiver. You might be able to have your own Skadi instead and pull in another waiver, or have your own waiver and pull in a Skadi if you just can't find another waiver on support. That's why you heard me caveat it earlier by saying Paracelsus might need to have a rank 10 charge skill. The reason for this is because in a double waiver comp, for instance, you actually don't need it. You can level Paracelsus's charge skill only to rank 3 and you'll be fine. But if you're going to have to be using Skadi, you're going to need to have it at rank 10 because of the way Skadi's charge can only be given to Sieg and not share some with Paracelsus like a double waiver comp can. It's a huge swing in difference. I'm going to tell you guys, if you want the maximum amount of options on your support and being able to choose whoever you please without having to mind it too much, but you probably want to rank 10 Paracelsus's charge skill, and it will help him out in other scenarios down the line. But if you don't care or you're short on resources, rank 3 should work for him. However, when we're talking about the damage dealing skills in this comp, please understand that we are assuming they are 10, especially rank 10 plug suit here. You guys are going to need the output necessary in order to ensure this 100% clear percentage. Now, while we're using the MLB damage C, you probably have a little bit of leeway to get away with less than 10, but we're still advising you guys to go to 10, and I wouldn't recommend testing it out too much for fear of clearing and not being able to 3-turn and really messing up the loop and turning it into a 6 or 7 or 8 turn instead. Looking at Sieg's, he's almost a guaranteed 10-10-10 across the board for what you're going to need, and part of that is because of his charge skill. The other part is going to be his refund. So as you guys can see over here on the right side, the refund on the second wave is just barely enough, so you gotta make sure that he has enough here. And then for the third wave, it's obviously not going to matter because you don't need to refund again. Instead, you're going to be concerned with damage output against Khadroth and Danzo for that, but otherwise you should be good here. I've had a lot of questions lately about Paracelsus and his skill levels and what you can get away with. may be able to get away with less, but we're still going to advise again 9 for the refund because it's going to help out Sieg, and 9 for the arts because again it's going to help out Sieg, and he's really going to need that. If you go 10, his refund will get even greater and you won't have to worry about that too much. But just understand that each of Paracelsus' skills are important and each of Sieg's skills are important, as well as Waver's 3rd skill and the rank of the plug suit. Now, for the pecking order for how you want to go about doing this comp, my advice is to go ahead and blow all of Waver's charge skills on Sieg, get him up to 50%, rotate him out with the plug suit, buff Sieg again with the other Waver skills, getting him all the way up to 100%. You're going to want to pop Sieg's first skill for his NP gain on that turn. You're going to want to pop Paracelsus's charge skill. You're going to want to pop Paracelsus's arts up skill for the party. You're going to want to pop Paracelsus's NP gain skill on Sieg. And then from there, you're safe to go ahead and use Paracelsus's Noble Phantasm to wipe out the first wave. On the second wave, you're going to pop Sieg's arts buff. Now, the reason you're popping it here on the second wave and not on the third wave is because you need the NP refund to get him back to that 70% threshold. In the final wave, his NP damage is fine with the MLB damage C, so you really don't have to care about how much damage he's going to do. And then on the third wave, we're literally just going to have to pop Sieg's charge skill, get him to 100%, NP nuke, and you should be fine. Remember, we're using that MLB damage C again, so the damage is just not an issue here. Most of you guys probably shouldn't have to pop the plug suit either if your skill levels are appropriate. If not, you might have to, so just be careful with that. Now then, some of you might be wondering, hey Cad, I've heard you can do a 6 CE comp with Sieg. And you're right, you can't. The problem with this comp is basically you're using all MLB drop Cs instead of the MLB damage C, so your output is greatly reduced. Even looking at this with 999 and 101010 skills, you're really just going to struggle. The majority of the problem with this comp is actually the fact that you use Sieg's arts buff in the second turn to get his NP refund high enough. Now, you guys might see the 80% refund here and think it's overkill, but unfortunately, if you don't pop it here, you probably still won't get enough refund for him. So that's one of the problems. The other problem being that you're not going to have that arts buff then on the final wave, and that is dramatically going to reduce his output. So you're sitting here probably wondering, well, Cad, can't I basically pop the arts buff on the final wave and not on the second wave and find a way to make up the NP gain? You can, but it revolves around card RNG. So for most of you guys, I'm just not going to recommend this. It's going to be amazingly RNG. Even with the arts buff on the second wave, it's still not going to cleanly kill in most circumstances. So it's not a comp I recommend, especially if you're concerned with efficiency and being able to clear consistently. If you're not and you want to take that risk just due to the benefits of taking a 6 CE and the additional drops that you'll get, by all means go for it. Just understand this is going to be a heavily RNG comp, and you can squeeze a little bit more out by buffing Paracelsus' skills all the way to 10, by making sure you're using MLB of the drop CE and maybe even leveling it all the way to 100, but that's still not going to remedy all the problems with this comp. 6 CE is not my recommendation. 5 CE is. It's a lot more consistent and should provide you guys with peace of mind compared to this comp. So just as an additional aside, this is the Skadi comp for 6 CE, and the only things I'll point out is if you shift the arts buff is going to do some decent damage here with the defense down in the final wave for him, and then the additional benefit is the Waver Skadi dichotomy that we talked about earlier, where you're going to be able to take one or the other depending on who you already have. So it opens up your support options. But then another intangible benefit is that when it comes down to the card RNG, you're mostly looking for that triple arts to save his refund, but you could actually potentially get away with a little bit extra oomph on his quick card if you buffed him with Skadi's quick card there. So it might help out and give you another option, but again, I cannot recommend this comp for most of you. Now we're going to transition into more of the other casters that are out there. Maybe a little bit harder for some of you guys to pull off because it's going to depend on which casters you have, but there are alternatives to Sieg in the semifinals. So here now, in a similar comp to the Sieg comp, we're doing a 5 CE with MLB damage C, but this one's using NP1 Da Vinci. Da Vinci, in what she has in her kit that's going to make her really nice, is she has 50% charge as well as charge per turn. This allows her to, over time, be able to accumulate a lot more charge to help her out. Refund here is actually pretty automatic, and you don't have to worry too much about it. This comp is going to employ double Nitocris NPs, and that's going to be the hardest part probably for you guys to pull off in this comp. It's going to assume an NP5 Nitocris. Actually, there's a little bit of a mistake here. This is just a informational one here, but it shows NP5 Da Vinci, but it's actually just NP1's numbers. Again, the MLB damage, she is really capable of producing a lot of output. So the assumptions at play in this one are also going to be, again, your standard third waiver skill at 10, plug suit at 10, Nitocris's charge skill needs to be at rank 8. That's going to give her 100% charge, and you're not going to pop that on the first wave. You're actually going to go ahead and do most of waiver's buffs on Nitocris instead of Da Vinci as well, which is another change from the Sieg comp. So you're going to focus on buffing Nitocris to 100% on the first wave with waiver and rotating out, and Da Vinci still in the party getting the extra little bit of charge there. And you're going to go ahead and NP with Nitocris on the first wave. If you're worried about potentially doing enough damage, you can pop the first skill and try to death proc. So if you were trying to work this with a under NP5 Nitocris, that would work, but I'm going to tell you not to do that because your problem is going to happen on the second wave, where, as you guys can see, the Domestic Orochi is going to basically live with quite a bit of health, and that's even with NP5. But you can do some things to help that out. You can start using an MLB drop CE on this Nitocris and maybe even level it up some, as opposed to doing anything else. But again, with an all caster comp, even if you were to do stuff like that and shave the amount of remaining health down on a min roll MP, you could get it to a manageable point where it's easy to card. So that's one of the reasons I'm going to tell you this, and you don't actually have to invest in really anything else in Nitocris's skills. Just make sure that she's foed, guys. Just make sure she has that rank 8 charge skill, and you should be able to take out with waivers charges the first wave, and then with Nitocris's own charge the second wave. In the meantime, you've got Da Vinci skills going on, and remember, like I said before, she's going to have 40% charge from the double waiver rotation where you were buffing everything for Nitocris to get her to full. So the reality is, with Da Vinci having a 10% NP charge per turn skill, if you pop that on wave 1, she'll have 50% as soon as wave 2. So if you have lured her third skill, that's all you need. If you haven't, let's say if you've gotten it to rank 6, you'll actually still be fine by the third wave where she finally needs to NP, because that'll get her 40% charge. So by wave 3, that 10% charge per turn would have her at 60%, and then that 40% charge from a rank 6 third skill should still work. Another interesting caveat here is the fact that Da Vinci can actually succeed with the MLB damage CE if she fails to get her NP damage up. It is a big factor to her damage at rank 10. I think it's 30% extra NP damage, but she should, with the MLB damage CE, be able to complete this. Danzo is probably who it's going to be a little bit tight on. She may fail to kill, but you should be able to card your way out of it. Don't worry too much about the RNG in this one, because again, the MLB damage CE is going to do a lot of the work for you. But just like I said, make sure that you have your plug suit at 10, make sure your waivers third skills are at 10, make sure that you have everything you need for Da Vinci, be it foes, be it skill levels, max level, whatever. And again, if you have an additional MP level Da Vinci, this is going to go even further. I actually really like the Da Vinci comp. Of these comps that I'm going to recommend here, this is probably the most consistent one, just because she doesn't have to fish for charge like some of the other ones will. So now you're probably wondering, hey Cad, can't I do this with Anastasia? And yes, you can. It's the exact same thing. 5 CE comp, MLB damage C, NP1. And again, we have that little graphical glitch there, but don't worry too much about it. What's different in this comp from a Da Vinci comp? Well, the problem is Anastasia, while she does have that 50% charge, does not have a 10% charge per turn. So where Da Vinci just got a free 20% charge to kind of help her out and maybe even make her charge skill not have to be at 10, Anastasia doesn't have that. So we're going to have to assume 10, 10, 10 on Anastasia for this, and a little bit that's going to hurt her, because only having 50% means that the 40% that she would get from double waiver, while that will help her out and work, unfortunately, it's going to leave her 10% shy. So she's going to have to fish for 10% charge. One of the things I would point out is there may be the possibility to fish before Noble Phantasms in the first 2 waves, because you're not really going to need it to kill in most of these circumstances. Again, remember, this is a non-MLB CE on the double Nitocris, so that's also going to be another similarity between the Da Vinci comp. Basically, in this comp, you're dealing with triple arts across the board for the servant's decks, as well as Nitocris having an arts NP. So it should be relatively easy for you to find a triple arts comp to just automatically get her that charge, or if you need to basically be able to get that little bit of oomph necessary to get charge if you had to card, say, with her arts and quick cards or something before a Nitocris NP or whatever. So this one is still fairly consistent, but it's going to have a higher skill requirement. So it's going to be that same double waiver rotation here, where we're popping all of the first waivers buffs on Nitocris, getting her to 50%, rotating him out, popping all the second waivers buffs on Nitocris, getting her to 100%, and then basically the only change here is Anastasia actually has a 3-turn charisma for the party, so make sure you pop that skill in wave 1. Get Nitocris that little extra oomph that she's probably going to need on the second wave, and basically you're just going to go to town on the first wave here with Nitocris. Then in the second wave, you're going to pop Nitocris's charge skill, do it all over again, and like I said, with that Anastasia charisma on her, it should help her. Just remember, you guys are going to have to be fishing for 10% extra charge for Anastasia. That is going to come in the form of either having to card with Anastasia or just forming a nice triple arts chain to get it nice and easy, if you can restrict the carding there. For the third wave, you're going to want to pop Anastasia's charge skill. That should also stun the enemies if you're lucky, and maybe if you were to fail to clear, and help you out on the back end, but hopefully you shouldn't have that problem with the MLB damage she. You're also going to want to pop her arts up and make sure that you kind of get that out of the way to help her hit hard enough to clear. Now, there may be a caveat where I'm going to say you might be able to use the 50% arts to try and help her get that NP gain in one of the first 2 waves. She does clear pretty cleanly here, but it is 50% arts, so keep that in mind. So this is another one where, as long as you're confident you can fish for the 10% charge, you might be able to get away with not having that skill at 10. Again, this is another little thing of, here's the benefit of using the MLB damage CE. I'm going to have some people ask me, I'm sure, can you use the 6 CE comp? But in similar fashion to Sieg, I really don't recommend it. I think you guys are going to be way more consistent with the MLB damage CE, and 5 CEs for the lotto drops is going to still be plenty of craft essences, still going to make you really grindy. I think the 6 CE comps are going to be something that only the craziest of players are going to do for the most part, and try to deal with that RNG. But keep in mind, even in a 5 CE comp here, you're still going to have RNG due to Anastasia's skills. Also keep in mind that the 6 CE comps are not using the MLB damage CE and aren't going to have nearly as much output, so you're basically looking at automatically at that point NP5s of these SSRs, in some cases even grailed, which is what I've heard for Anastasia, so I would not recommend it again. Now, there is also a Nero caster comp for this. I have the calculations handy, but I will probably save them for a later video that I'm going to do, maybe covering Buster or additional comps for Gilfest. But just know it's basically the same comp as this. You're still going to have to fish for that 10% extra charge, although it's going to be a lot harder dealing with a more Buster-oriented servant rather than a arts-oriented servant like Anastasia or Da Vinci. So just keep that in mind if you guys want to attempt that. So let's talk finals now. And in the finals, you guys can see that we've got a mixture of assassins and sabers. And so this is where you guys are really going to start to see Jarcher come into play. Some of you guys here in Summer 3 may be noticing just how nice Jarcher is to use, both for looping and for some of her intangible benefits like stars per turn on her NP. So that makes her really nice. It actually makes her a little bit comparable to some of those quick comps where you're just going to be always shitting those stars out. And that should give you guys a decent chance to crit with cards should you ever have to rely on them. This is the Jarcher comp with 5 CEs and the MLB damage she again. Again, you guys can see, just like with the Sieg comp, this basically blows it out of the water, with the only issue here being Osaka Behime with a 72% chance to clear and 6k remaining. That's not bad. That's completely manageable. And the only other thing I'll point out here is this is an NP1 Jarcher instead. So we're still assuming 1099 on Paracelsus's skills. If you are using double waiver, the charge skill wouldn't have to be at 10 again. If you're using waiver Skadi, like I will show you guys in a minute, then it has to be at 10. That's the only way you guys are going to be able to do the charge in the correct order. Just keep that in mind. We're also assuming Jarcher at 10 10 10 skills, so it should be okay. And one of the other caveats that I'll point out here that I haven't pointed out in any of the other ones is that you actually don't need an MLB drop CE on Paracelsus. The drop CE gives bonus to quick, arts, and NP damage, so if you were using an MLB drop CE on Paracelsus, it actually would, in some of the comps where he maybe fails to clear that last enemy, it actually would make it so that he was completely capable of killing the last enemy and never having to card. So it's something to keep in mind if you wanted to make sure of clear percentages and never having to card, but it's not a gotta have. You can actually, in most cases, clear without MLB on that first wave. So really nice little hidden gem there. Also, the other thing I'm going to point out to you guys here is with Paracelsus's arts up to the party and targetable MP gain skills, we're assuming them at 9 again, but just keep in mind here, we're looking at Jarcher's NP gain on the third wave, and it is a little bit close to calls here, so maybe consider investing in Paracelsus's skills a tad higher. I know people that are pretty opposed to that, but if you find yourself getting shortchanged, it may be time to look into this. My first guess for what you should look into, though, is the NP gain skill. I think that's the primary reason to use Paracelsus in most cases, so maybe look at lowering that one if you're finding yourself coming in short, because again, we're using the MLB damage sheet here, and while people think that damage is going to be a huge part of the refund, there's only so much you can get, and unfortunately with how much damage you'll be doing compared to how much damage the mobs have, there's really going to be no chance at getting a card in to help her refund out. So just keep that in mind if you're getting a little bit too close to call here. But for how to pull this comp off here, this one's going to be a little bit less standard. Basically, remember Paracelsus's charge skill at rank 10 is 80%, but at rank 3 it's 60%, so that'd be the minimum of what you would need in a double waiver comp. We'll go over waiver here real quick, but obviously if it's Skadi, this is going to change around a little bit, and you can use Skadi with this comp, so just keep that in mind. So we're going to start out with basically doing all of the first waiver's skills. You're going to target Jarcher with them and make sure that she gets to that 50% charge. That's going to bring Paracelsus to that 20% that he needs. If you have a rank 10 charge skill, you're good to go ahead and NP after you pop Paracelsus's other buffs on Jarcher to make sure that she will have them for the later waves. If not, if you're dealing with that rank 3 skill, you're going to then rotate that waiver out, rotate the other waiver in, and basically do probably the attack buff, if I had to say. Make sure that Paracelsus kills, and then he should be fine. You should be able to knock out that first wave, which is all assassins, fairly easily. From there, you're going to get into the second wave, where this gets a little bit more concerning, but basically Jarcher at this point, she'll need to have the second waiver's first skill popped now, or if you already popped it in the first wave, because like I said, you were dealing with less Paracelsus charge. So she should be sitting at 60% right here. That's where you're going to want to pop her charge skill. Her charge skill gives her NP damage up. It's going to help her out on that second wave. And then again, that should get her to 100%. You want to make sure you pop that. You want to make sure you pop her charisma, and you want to make sure you pop her arts up. So that should be good for her there. You won't have to pop much more on her. And from here, you'll be able to take out the second wave and start getting those stars per turn going. Then on the final wave, you're going to pop waiver's 2 remaining skills, get her to 100% again, and at this point pop the plug suit if you need it and go to town. And I'm going to tell you guys, you probably will need the plug suit on this one just because of that pesky Osaka Behime, so keep that in mind there. That's going to be a very nice comp. It's going to be very fluid, very fast, and again should be really reliable for you guys. Now, in a less reliable format here, you have the 6 CE comp with MLB drop CE on Jarcher. This is still going to be fairly consistent. It's not going to be nearly as bad as Sieg in my eyes, because Sieg is going to leave enemies with a lot more health than his 6 CE comp, and that's why I don't really recommend his. Whereas in this one, you still get the benefit of 6 CEs. Worst case scenario, you might have to 4-turn, but it's not going to be bad. It's probably going to take 1 more card to finish them off. I mean, you just got to be careful that you don't leave someone alive like Musashi, who's going to possibly invul on you on that next turn. Keep in mind, some of the assumptions here are that you are using an NP5 Jarcher in this, and the damage output is still not quite there. You can do other things to stretch it, like leveling up your drop CE on your Jarcher to just get a little bit more oomph out of the attack power of that CE. Just understand it is a split stat craft essence, so I don't necessarily recommend it but due to the fact that the Gilfest craft essences don't basically ever end up on the rerun, because Gilfest is a weird event, sort of like Nero Fest, where it'll run again next year, but it won't use the same craft essences. You're actually safe to go ahead and level it up for this event, and then if you had to, worst case, you can feed it to some other craft essence basically to level that craft essence up instead. So it's not a total loss if you had to level it. But again, looking at this is going to function the exact same way as the 5 CE comp with MLB damage CE would. There's no real changes in that regard, and actually you might end up in a little bit better situation due to your refund, but that's partially because the MLB drop CE actually has arts on it, so that's going to help the NP refund out a little bit as well there. But before I start prattling on too much, let's get into the problem with this comp, and that is that yeah, you could potentially leave 2 enemies alive. Again, just like we talked about earlier, you are going to have a lot of crit stars, so while 30k on Osaka Behime may look undoable, it's actually really not. You're going to have a really good chance at clearing her most of the time, and remember, that is a min roll on an MP5. While you would have 0% chance to clear her otherwise with a max roll, she's still not going to be out of cardable range, whereas Musashi, 93% of the time you're going to clear. So I'm going to say that 7% of the time you're going to end up in this bad 4-turn scenario. Otherwise, you should kill just about every single time. So a 93% success rate on a 6 CE comp is really good. Think of all the benefits and extra drops you're going to get from that versus a 5 CE comp where it's going to be 100% clear. So it's just up to you to weigh that. Again, though, you're going to be using that NP5 Jarcher. So what do you do if you don't have an NP5 Jarcher and you want to pull this off? Find a friend who does. Just like in the Gilfest video I did for Dante's, it's a similar fashion. This is the benefit of arts, that you can actually take a support whale Jarcher if you had to. You can't do that at the same time as taking double waiver, because you would have to have your own waiver as well as a support waiver. But you can substitute in Skadi instead, so that is still an option. I know we didn't have the asterisk on this one, but don't worry about that. Just make sure you've got your foes on everyone. Make sure you've got their skills at 10 if they're relevant. And again, there are things you can do to squeeze out a little bit more damage, like get Paracelsus's middle skill to 10. But it's probably still not going to completely get rid of that chance to not kill Musashi, unfortunately. So just to show you guys the Skadi comp here, the only real difference is going to come in wave 2, whereas you guys can see the damage numbers are a little bit lower. The refund shouldn't be affected, but what it is that you're missing out on for that second wave is you're missing out on the second waver's attack buff, as well as Jarcher herself's NP damage buff from her charge skill, because you're going to have to wait until after the wave 2 NP to pop that. Thankfully, Jarcher's buff is only 20%, so it shouldn't make a too big of a difference. It's more going to be the second waiver that you're missing, but that does get made up for in the third wave with Skadi's defense down on the third wave, so you guys should be fine in that regard. I just wanted to show you guys again the spreadsheet for this so that you guys would understand that yes, it is an option, and this will allow you to take your friend's Jarcher if you were to have your own waiver in Skadi. As for the skill order on this one, just to go through it with you guys, because Skadi's comp is a little bit weirder, just understand that we're basically going to be popping things in a different order here. In the waiver Skadi comp, please understand we have to assume a rank 10 Paracelsus charge, because otherwise the charge allocation does not work out. He's got to have that 80%. Basically, you're going to pop waiver's last 2 skills in the first wave, get Paracelsus to 20%, charge himself up, pop Paracelsus's other skills on Jarcher, and then go ahead and NP. On the second turn, you're going to pop waiver's first skill on Jarcher, rotate him out, bring in Skadi, pop her charge skill on Jarcher, and that should get you to 100%. Remember, you're not going to have Jarcher's charge skill here for the 20% extra MP damage, because you've got to use that later. However, you do still want to make sure that you pop Jarcher's charisma and Jarcher's arts up. Go ahead and NP there. Then as you guys get to the third turn, finally now you can pop Skadi's defense down, you can pop Jarcher's charge skill to get her up to 100% due to the refund and get her that 20% modifier. Go ahead and pop the plug suit and go to town. Just again, remember, you might end up with 2 enemies, so you want to kind of stagger cards if you can help it, and that should increase your odds of success. But just understand, you might 4-turn every once in a blue moon with this comp. Just don't worry too much about it. It's still probably worth it to be able to take 6 CEs all the time. That extra drop bonus is going to be huge for you. Okay guys, I hope you found this helpful. Again, I just wanted to cover some of the arts comps. I know I had a lot of questions about them on stream. For those of you guys that don't know, I stream weekdays on Twitch at twitch.tv/Khadroth.
I'm also going to be doing account reviews probably shortly in the future to help people out with Gilfest, and that's one of the reasons I'm trying to get these videos out here for you, so that you guys can have a little bit of homework that you guys can do to prepare yourself in advance. If you guys haven't already, be sure to join the Team Explosion Discord. Just go up to the channel at the very top and assign yourself a role, and be sure to like, comment, and subscribe. It really helps the channel out, so thank you guys for watching, and I will see you all in the next video.